Okay, Arnie, we're all set. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 21st, 2021 meeting of Danbury Planning Commission. If everybody could mute, that would probably, unless you're speaking, that would probably help a little bit. And I will open by, does everybody hear a tone or something like that? All right, we're going to find out for this. All right, let's go. Let's open with a roll call. Mr. Urice.
Here.
Ms. Hofstadter.
Here.
Mr. Chiocchio.
Here.
Mr. Sylvain.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Renz and Mr. Haas are absent, and Chairman Finaldi is here, so we do not have to seat alternates for tonight's meeting. Before I ask for a motion to accept this, I will read the introduction to the virtual Zoom meetings. This meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission is being held on Zoom as a virtual meeting. Even though this meeting is a virtual meeting, members of the public and interested parties continue to have the opportunity to participate in the meeting in a couple of different ways. You can participate via Zoom and see the audio and the video, or you can call in by phone and participate via audio only. Just a heads up, if you do call in, please mute your phone to avoid an echo. Instructions on how to participate in the meeting appear on the City of Danbury website, and all of the documents and materials that apply to the matters to be discussed during this meeting, including the agenda, are also available on the City of Danbury website. As always, if you have any questions, please contact the City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department. As a reminder, the entire meeting will be posted on and can be seen on the City of Danbury website. We will follow the posted agenda as per standard practice. If prior to the meeting any questions or comments on agenda items were submitted via email to Sharon Calitro, those comments will be read during the appropriate portion of the meeting. So with that said, Commission members, the minutes of the April 7th, 2021 meeting were previously distributed. Unless there's any comments or corrections, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Urice. I think the second was Ms. Hofstadter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are accepted. We will move right to, hold on. I have to find the legal notice. Bear with me for one quick second, folks. Just want to get the legal notice. Hang on. My apologies to Joanne Reed. You did email me the legal notice and I printed it and I had to go get it. So my apologies there. Tonight, just before I move on, please make a note that the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission will be May 5th, 2021. And we will open tonight's agenda with the first public hearing. Item 1, Real-Time Capital Properties, LLC. Application for special exception, revised site plan for expansion of existing self-storage facility, safe and sound storage in the IL40 zone, 18 Great Pasture Road, L15008 and 009, special exception number 769. I will read the legal notice into the record. Application to be heard by the Planning Commission at public hearing on a web-based meeting hosted on Zoom on April 21st, 2021, 7:30 p.m. Agenda to be posted will include instructions to access the Zoom meeting and application materials. Pursuant to Executive Order 71, Section 9C, notice is hereby given that the following applications will be heard. Public hearing. Real-Time Capital Properties, LLC. Application for special exception, revised site plan for expansion of existing self-storage facility, safe and sound storage in the IL40 zone, 18 Great Pasture Road, L15008 and 009, and L16007, special exception 769. Arnold D. Finaldi Jr., Chairman, posted to the city website and sent to town clerk on April 8th, 2021. Commission members, the documents that pertain to this particular application were previously distributed. And with that, I will ask, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application?
Yes, good evening. For the record, Mike Mizuko, professional engineer. My office is in Danbury.
representing the applicant. This was an application that was previously submitted. We had first saw and got approval back in 2006, 2007 for a self-storage facility. And at that time, that self-storage use was not a special exception use. And subsequent to that, the applicant acquired a piece of property to the north or to the left of the site if you're looking at it from the road. It was a very narrow strip of property, but it allowed him to expand the width of his buildings by the amount that the property that was acquired in that northerly direction. And so the application was filed, and that was in 2019. And we were real close with an approval, and we had gotten wetlands approval at that time as well. And right towards the very end, there was a violation with storage of items within the access way, and actually extended back further onto the rear part of the property, which is in a residential zone, which was even worse. And so at the time, we ended up withdrawing the application, and it took this long for the applicant to clean up the access way from the stuff that was stored on there. And so essentially it was the same application, although there was a little bit of confusion and mix up that Jennifer and I sort of straightened out today. And back at that time, I had received a couple of letters from construction services and one from engineering. I had made the changes, wrote the response letter to engineering, but apparently it was never sent in. I think it was all during that time that the issue came up and we ended up withdrawing it. So I did send Jennifer a PDF of those plans, and I'm going to drop off a hard copy of everything to Kelly Green in engineering, and also a hard copy for Jennifer tomorrow. And if you want, I can share my screen and just walk you through what the site looks like, just to maybe refresh your memory, or unless you have a great memory. I don't, but it's up to you. I'll do whatever your pleasure is.
It's your show, Mike.
All right, then I'll just share my screen. I'll walk you real quickly through the. Can everybody see that? I had a problem with it last night in New Fairfield.
Yeah, nice. Sure.
Okay, I'm just sharing my AutoCAD screen because it's just easier for me to walk you through. So here's you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, that's the existing facility. The Bethel line is like right here. And he acquired a long, thin strip of property to the north that pretty much wasn't really useful to anybody except for somebody on either side of it. And these are just, again, area mapping. You can see the town line there. And that's just the soils mapping and then the flood mapping. So you can see the flood zone in the back there that we have to deal with. And so this is the existing conditions. And you can see this red line here is the line, the former lot line. So this is the strip that he acquired. And you can see the existing driveways around the building, the existing detention system in the back here. And then the proposal is to extend out the existing buildings to the north and also establish more of a formal office in a separate building. A lot of that has to do with the water line connections, believe it or not, with the city. It really depends on the size of the building. So if it's a large building, even though you're using it very little, the fee to hook up gets expensive. And we're also just expanding the detention basin to just handle the additional impervious areas created by the new buildings. The property is served by municipal water, as I just mentioned, and on-site septic. So we have a very small septic here for employees and some visitors. And again, I just had to redo the drainage, some of the drainage, extend it up to the north to accommodate the new buildings. And as I mentioned, expand the detention basin. And this is just a detailed septic plan cross section. And then our detail sheet, just standard details. So as I mentioned, these plans were, I was kind of surprised today because I thought I had sent them in, but they were revised, but never sent in. So I had the letters done in May of 19, made the revisions, and I'll just show you real quick with the one regard to construction services. They just want us to add 5 feet to the sidewalk and install this ramp and put the warning strips in perpendicular to the travel way of the sidewalk. So that was really about it. So like I said, we were really close the last time with the application, and we had to withdraw it. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll stop the share and we can.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Joel.
just to refresh my memory, as I recall, there was some equipment of sorts stored in the rear part of the lot. That was part of the thing that had to be cleaned up. Could you just, on this map you're sharing right now, just kind of show me where that was, just refresh my memory?
Yeah, it was pretty much from this point here back, he had stuff stored. It was a pretty wide road or access way. And so he had stuff stored on each side. I think at that point you could still drive a vehicle through, but not much else. So again, you can see this line. The rear part of the main part of the property is the zone line. So you're RA 40 beyond this magenta line. So that was another issue, that you're storing it in a residential zone. So that all had to get cleaned up.
And did all of that cleanup get done? All the
Yes,
miscellaneous stuff that was stored there removed?
Yes, because one of the conditions before we could really move forward with the application was Jennifer Eminger wanted something in writing from Sean Harity, the zoning enforcement officer, and he did go out, look at the site, and said that it was acceptable as it was, and he did clean it up.
Very good.
Thanks, Joel. Any other questions from Mike Mizuko at this time, commission members? Okay, Mike, you all set?
I'm all set.
Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone else in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Jen, are we waiting for any other departments to weigh in at this time?
Mr. Chairman, so as Mike said, it's slightly not confusing, but we thought we'd had it all buttoned up and all outstanding comments resolved, except I dug into the old file. I want to say Monday or Tuesday, and realized that there was an outstanding the outstanding letter from Kelly Green. There were only very, very minor comments, and then we'd had an outstanding letter from Construction Services. Mike did submit those revisions today. We have them digitally along with those responses, and they'll be forwarded to those departments tomorrow. So it's up to the commission. If you're comfortable closing, again, all the information's been received. And, as you know, we can accept staff comments after the hearing's closed. The applicant just can't respond to those. But because we've already gone through, I think this would have been Kelly's third staff report. So the expectation is her next staff report would be a sign off. Same with Construction Services. So, and I don't believe anything outstanding would result in changing the site plan. So if the commission's comfortable, you can certainly close and provide guidance. And then we'll have hopefully those sign offs before the commission acts at the next meeting.
Thanks, Jen. On this particular application, and again, I'll defer to the other members, but I'd like to keep it open only because the last time I did personally inspect the accessway that we were referring to earlier, and I did see the various vehicles and boats and firewood and stuff all stored along the accessway. I know I'd feel a little bit more comfortable driving by there again and taking a ride down and confirming, not that I don't believe Sean, I do, but I just like to see for myself that the accessway has been cleared off, all those problems are gone, and then I'd feel more comfortable closing the public hearing. But again, I'll ask the other commission members if they have any opinions on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Joel.
if there's no rush other than the applicant's side of the fence, if there's no rush from the planning commission and the timeline there, I'm fine with leaving it open till the next meeting, although we could give her guidance tonight in anticipation that all of that's taken care of.
Okay, Joel, thank you for that. I don't think we have to give guidance tonight, because if we keep the public hearing open, I think after I or whoever wants to drive out there confirms that everything is okay, we could do that at the next meeting, but you could do it at this meeting too. I don't have any issue with that. Anyone else have an opinion that you definitely want to close tonight or anything like that? Anyone?
I mean, on behalf of the applicant, I don't have any issues, and I understand your concern about the stuff that was stored in the accessway. But from my perspective and the applicant's perspective, we have no issue if you decide to close the public hearing.
Okay. Well, commission members, we have to decide whether to open or close. My request was to keep it open through one more meeting, and we can close it on May 5th.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
All right, then.
Mr. Chairman, I have no reason to oppose your request or suggestion, so I would make a motion to carry forward that way.
To continue to make
hearing open. Yes.
Thank you. So a motion's been made to continue this public hearing till our next meeting on May 5th. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Joel Urice. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. And again, just to be sure, I'll take a roll call vote. A yes is to continue, a no is to not continue. Mr. Urice.
Yes.
Ms. Hofstetter?
Yes.
Mr. Kiokio?
Yes.
Mr. Sylvain?
Yes.
And Chairman Finaldi votes yes. Yeah, we'll continue this till the next meeting. And again, commission members, remember that you have the right to take a spin by there in your car if you are so inclined on this or any application. Sometimes a drive-by is helpful. So thank you. And Mike, we'll continue this till our next meeting on May 5th.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, looking at our agenda. You will note that the next three items have all, the request has been to table all three of them. So I will read them and then I'll entertain a motion to table on each one. Continuation of public hearing, number 1, Newtown Road LLC, Maria and Manuel Neves Govea Marquis and Antonio Mendez Govea Marquis. Application for special exception site plan approval for child daycare center in the CG20 RA8 zone, 36 Newtown Road, 40 and 42 Newtown Road, Whitney Avenue. I'll skip reading the map numbers. Special exception 780. This application is tabled. There will be no action taken or discussion on.
So do we need a motion to table if it's already tabled?
No, you do need a motion, please.
Okay. You do?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to table?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to table this application. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 This matter will be tabled until our next meeting. Jen, is there anything we should know about this, or is it Moving along slowly. What's up?
It's before the zoning commission.
Okay.
So, and we're fine with time. I've been keeping track of that. So we'll see what happens with the zoning commission, what the applicant chooses to do at that point.
Okay, keep us posted.
I certainly will.
Number 2, Nijane Plaza LLC, application for special exception revised site plan approval to permit storage of concrete aggregates or manufacture of concrete and concrete product storage of bituminous product, storage or sale of building materials and storage of construction equipment, Nijane Pool Industrial Site in the IG 80 zone. 44 Payne Road, N12004, special exception 776. This application has been tabled and continued until the next meeting at the request of the applicant's attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to table this application.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Second, I think Mr. Kyokyo was the second. Motion being seconded to table. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 And last but not least, number 3, Global Partners LP, First Star Realty LLC, application for revised special exception revised site plan for automobile service station, global gas station, the CG20 zone, 108 Newtown Road and 5 Mountain View Terrace, M10029 and M10028, special exception 720. This application has been tabled and continued until the next meeting at the request of the applicant's attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I can make a motion to table this application.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll try your minds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed. So I'll tell you, when these things all hit the agenda at the same time, we're going to have ourselves one long meeting. The great postponers here. But anyway, okay, what are you going to do? We're doing the best we can here. And we'll keep moving forward. Old business for discussion and possible action. We have number 1 is a referral. I'm sorry, we have we have nothing under our old business for discussion and possible action agenda, so we will move right to referrals. Item 1, 838 referral petition of SC Ridge Owner LLC to amend sections 4H2B 2A and 4H2B 3B of zoning regulations. The public hearing is scheduled for May 11th, 2021. The information on this in the staff report were previously distributed. Sharon, I guess we'll handle these 2 separately, right? The 2 separate referrals?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to Sharon.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good evening. So we received a petition from SC Ridge Owner LLC to amend the several sections of the P&D zoning regulations, specifically 4H2B2A, 4H2B2A4, 4H2B3B2, and to add section 4H2B3B5, again, to the P&D regulations. And the reason is to provide some flexibility in the adaptive reuse or retrofitting of a large building in the P&D, and also to allow for and provide for a secondary school as a community facility as part of a mixed-use development in the P&D. And the reasons were outlined in a letter from Attorney Beecher dated March 30th. I'm going to go through each one of them in order in which they appear in the regulation, so we can just follow along. So the first one is to amend 4H2B2A, and that is to increase the maximum allowable non-residential square footage from 75 to 85% of the existing building gross floor area. And this is in the case of a retrofit of an existing large building. So when the regulations were adopted, we set the maximum for non-residential square footage in this particular case, again, on a retrofit building. And the reason for the increase from 75% to 85% is really to account for some interior space that, when the applicant has dove into like looking at the building, there's obviously space inside an existing building that is not rentable space. We're talking about elevator shafts and hallways and common spaces. So their request was to increase the percentage from 75 to 85% to account for that. We don't think that that's unreasonable. We understand that there's obviously some non-rentable space inside. And using the 85% also kind of puts it in line with the percentage that we use to calculate parking when we don't kind of know what the building, all the details about a building. We say, okay, take 85% of the gross floor area because there's space inside that won't generate a parking demand. So that the 85 is kind of a consistent number. So that's the first proposed amendment, and we didn't think that that was unreasonable. The second one is to amend section 4H to be 2A4, and that is to allow for a reduction, again, in the case of the retrofit alternative in a PND, which currently requires 250 dwelling units to be constructed inside the building that is to be retrofit. And this amendment provides for a reduction in that minimum number of residential dwelling units to 175. So instead of 250 being required, they still have to provide 175. And why? Why is that necessary? Again, it's to compensate for the commensurate loss of the space in the retrofit building. Again, they're still required to be a minimum number of residential units. So you're insured a mix of uses inside that building. So it won't just be like a retrofit office building. You have to put some residential in there. But in the case that you have a school that's owned and operated, and we'll get to this in the next discussion, operated by the city of Danbury, then you can reduce the number of dwelling units. And that, again, isn't a, this regulation, the way it's proposed, wouldn't apply if it was another school, a private school. Why? Because there isn't the same level of public benefit. So in that specific case, you would still be required to provide the minimum 250. But in this case, you're helping the community, you're helping the city. It's a public school that will be owned and operated by the city. So that is a benefit. The third amendment is to 4H2B3B2, and that actually is to add a secondary school to the list of permitted community facilities in a PND. The existing regulations allow for kindergarten and elementary schools, but it doesn't specifically say secondary school. There is the general catch-all phrase that, you know, uses of similar kind of character as approved by the zoning commission. But in this particular case, it was thought that it was important to specify the secondary schools so they didn't have to kind of ask the zoning commission. Again, it's not just in the case of a retrofit building, but in the case of you had vacant land and you wanted to just, rezone it to a P&D. You could put a secondary school on there. And let me just see on the number to make sure I'm hitting all my notes. I don't want to read my memo to you. You all have it. Okay, and the fourth one is to add section 4B, 2B, 3B5, and that is to allow for the exclusion of the, so we just talked about what the floor area is, right? What the maximum floor area in the non-residential category. So this, the last one in 3B5 is to allow that area of a school that's owned and operated by the city of Danbury not to count towards the maximum square footage, non-residential square footage. Again, it kind of incentivizes somebody to develop a public school, and they're not, they're not hurt by the fact that they can't rent out other space either in the building or in a, if it's not a public school. Again, a private kindergarten, a private school that's operated for commercial use for profit is not the same thing as a school that's owned and operated by the city of Danbury, so that this exclusion only applies if there's a public school in the building. In terms of compliance with the Plan of Conservation and Development, again, these are general zoning amendments precipitated by this collaborative effort between the city and the petitioner regarding the Danbury Career Academy, but they will also help address kind of the retrofitting of the building on the west side. And as to the west side, we all know that there is a specific section in the POCD about the west side. And so in this regard, it complies with the vision statement 3 of the POCD, which says that the west side should, among other things, be the focus of creatively designed neighborhoods. And I could tell you that if you don't think putting a school in a 1.2 million square foot building, a public, isn't creative, I'm not really sure what is. So I think in that respect, it definitely meets, it is in compliance with that section. Again, the land development plan section of the POCD also said that landowners should be encouraged to improve the design of renovated structures. Again, I think it's creative and will help improve this structure as it's renovated for a school. The public facilities and utilities section of the POCD, again relative to Danbury Public Schools, indicates that necessary school facilities be provided to meet the growing and changing needs of the Danbury Public Schools. I think we all understand what's going on in the school district, and the amendments which would provide for a secondary school, and then some exclusions if you do it as a public school, just do that. And again, there's no requirement for consistency with the land development plan map because this is a generalized zoning amendment. So in conclusion, we don't have an objection to the increase from 75 to 85%, because we understand that there is interior space inside of building that really is not rentable space. So, don't make that count towards, so it counts towards it, but we're on the other side of it, we're allowing an increase. So an increase from 75 to 85%. So it kind of accommodates the fact that there's interior space that you can't rent. Adding the secondary school to the list of schools is appropriate, as I said before, considering where we are as a city in 2021 and that we have to address our increasing student population. And then reducing the minimum number of dwelling units inside the retrofit building, and then not counting that space towards the maximum non-residential also incentivizes the developers to do something for the community. And we think it's a good thing. Schools weren't, secondary schools weren't listed in 2002. We were not in the same situation 20 years ago, 19 years ago that we are today. So I think we need to consider that as well. Again, to amend the regulations, you as a planning commission have to find that it's consistent with the POCD, and send your recommendation to the zoning commission. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Joel.
Ms. Cletro, just one thing really in the whole scenario here that catches my ear is the reduction in the minimum number of residential units. When we really went through that whole scenario earlier, when we approved this as being what, 240, I believe it was. I'm just asking for you to speculate. Well, what happens if the applicant comes back to us next year and says, you know what, we really want to build some big condos in there. We only want to build 50.
Well, you would consider, that they'd have to propose some amendment. And then you'd have the opportunity to say 50 doesn't provide the, a sufficient amount, or it does, or the mix is, it isn't what we envisioned for whatever that P&D or retrofit building. Well, in this case, the reduction is only allowed in the retrofit building. Yeah. But you can't have both, right? If you're going to put a school in there and use up space, you can't also fit everything else in. So, and it's only a reduction. And this is the key point. You only get the reduction if it's a school that's owned and operated by the city of Danbury. So somebody that has a private kindergarten, a private nursery school, a private, another private high school, they don't get to reduce the number of dwelling units. And why would you make that distinction? I mean, they're a school, right? Somebody would ask a logical thought. City gets it, why don't I get it? Why? Because it's if it's owned and operated by Danbury, it's providing a public benefit that is not the same level of public benefit as a commercial enterprise, as a private enterprise that's operating necessarily for a profit. So
Okay.
you don't need to send your kids to a private kindergarten or elementary or private high school, but people who reside in Danbury, should be able to educate their kids in a Danbury public school. So you only get the reduction if it's a Danbury school. We own the school, we operate the school. That's all. And nothing,
Okay.
I mean, the answer to your question is nothing stops anybody from coming back and asking.
Okay, the reason I even raise this, I remember whenever we went through the scenario before, and we were talking about putting schools inside, just 1 through 8, I think was authorized at that time, was I just thought to myself, wow, what an opportunity for perhaps well-heeled, but families from buying condos in this complex and their kids having a nice, safe way to walk to school, out of the weather, out of hopefully, evil people's eyes. And this is, lowers the number that might be put in there. But that aside, I would make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to return a positive referral to the zoning commission.
Thank you, Joel. There's a motion on the table for a positive referral. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hostetter. Commission members, any other comments at this time on the referral? Mr. Chair.
Yeah, 2 questions. How will the ownership of the school work? Will the city actually own part of the building or the land or the inside or part of the building? How will that work?
Yeah, well, in the specific case of the Summit building, it's like a condominium. So the city will own the pods. As I understand it, again, this is a zoning amendment, but so it's applicable to the P&D zone everywhere. But if you're asking about kind of the Danbury Career Academy, it's going to be like condominiumized. So the city will own the space.
Got it.
And
Okay.
operate the school in the space, just like it's divided up into different condominiums.
Got it.
Organizations.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one other question. Why, do you know why there was a 75% was originally used? And is the kind of the non-usable space normally considered in that calculation? I'm just trying to get a little bit of background and.
Well, no, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I mean, I went back and forth a bunch of times with Attorney Beecher when we were talking about, and they were, proposing the amendments to the regulations over a year ago. And we didn't want it to be, you get to build 100% of your building. So like, what's a reasonable amount? And we tried to figure out, okay, if you need this, assuming you had this many units, how would that fit into a building of this size? And then what does that percentage look like of what's left over? And it seemed like it worked at the time. And we just didn't really account for so much space being kind of this common non-rentable space. And I mean, you want the retrofit building to succeed. So you want to be able to give them some square footage that is rentable and helps achieve what their objective is. And then when they really kind of did a deeper dive into kind of the building, from their perspective, it just turned out that there was a lot of this hallway space, stairwell space, elevator shaft space that was in the 75%. So we said, So they came back and said, well, we can do it a couple different ways. You carve it out and just use a usable, which we also do in the regs, or you can, or the alternative is to increase it a little bit to accommodate, to compensate for it. So we just felt like 85% was a good number. And it also really did jive with how we calculate parking. Like if you came to us with a 50,000 square foot building, we're saying a commercial building, office building, we would say not 50,000 square feet is all office space. There's interior space that is not going to be office space. It's hallways, the same thing. And so we allow people to go to 85%. So we just thought it wasn't, it was consistent with that same, using that same percentage. So it gives them a little bit more to account for space that they can't really lease.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there any other questions for Sharon at this time on this particular referral? Hearing none, there is a motion and a second already made for a positive referral.
Mr. Chairman, can I just get so that Joanne gets we have the minutes in the letter, right? So the reasons either subject to, the reasons in the staff report or finding of consistency pursuant to the staff report or some other thing that you might want to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some reasons. We got to have the reasons.
I don't mind making a friendly amendment to the original motion. I would, if the seconder will withdraw, I would make a motion to return a positive referral to the zoning commission because of the manner issues outlined in the staff report. How's that?
And how about, Jill, how about it's consistent with the POCD? That's always a good thing.
And that's consistent with the POCD that we're working on to revise.
Perfect.
And Helen is still okay seconding that motion. Thank you very much, Helen. Okay, commission members, any other questions or discussion on this?
Understand.
Hello?
Oh, she's frozen, Joanne.
Any of that.
Say that again, Joanne. Oh.
Uh-oh.
No, we're still going, so.
Okay. All right. I'm going to continue to move forward, hoping that Joanne joins us soon, seeing that she is the captain of this ship on Zoom. Okay. A yes is a positive referral. A no is not a positive referral. Let me take the roll call vote. Mr. Urice. Ms. Hofstetter.
Yes.
Mr. Chiocchio.
Yes,
Mr. Sylvain.
Yes.
And Chairman Finaldi votes yes. This particular matter gets a positive referral from the Planning Commission. And with that, we'll move right to the second 8-3A referral. Again, petition of SC Ridge Owner LLC to amend the master plan for the summit, approved June 23rd, 2020, public hearing scheduled for May 11th, 2021. And Sharon, back to you.
Okay, thank you. So yes, this is a petition by SC Ridge Owner LLC to amend their 2020 master plan for the summit. So there are basically two requests, and that is to allow them to go up to the full 75. Now, you have to separate yourself from the last conversation. It's still 75% of the building for the maximum non-residential square footage. So the request is good to go to the full 75%, and I'll explain that in a minute, under the retrofit, and to set a minimum and maximum square footage for the non-residential uses to provide some flexibility in the leasing of the space of the existing building. So as you know, the building sits on 99.5 acres. And the reasons were out for the request to amend the plan were outlined in Attorney Beecher's March 3rd, 2021 letter. So the first request to amend the master plan is, again, to increase the maximum non-residential square footage to the maximum allowed under the PND regs. Again, at the time, what exists currently, it's 75% of the existing building. So last summer, when their master plan was approved, there was discussion about what that 75% number was. And then there was a commensurate list of all the uses in the building. When you total, Okay. Oh, Joanne's back in. Okay. When you totaled all of the uses that were on the submission to the zoning commission, that actually totaled 942,513,000 square feet. When 75% of the existing building is 950,390 square feet. So there was a tiny little 7,877 square feet of space, which I think they thought got approved. The way we read it was you gave us a list of uses, you added it all up, it added to this number, and that's what we thought you were approved for. So they're just saying, please allow us to go to the maximum so that they don't have space that they can't use in the building. So again, we don't see any real issue with that request. Again, that's the way the regulations are written. They have the ability to ask for that. And I think, again, I think they thought they had it. The second request is to set these minimum and maximum non-residential use category limits to allow for flexibility within the building. So I'm probably preaching to the choir, but the non-residential uses in the P&D are kind of made up of three categories. There's neighborhood retail and service uses, there's community facilities, and there's non-residential uses not serving the immediate needs of the residential development. And there's a list of uses within each of those categories. And those uses, again, add up, the maximum is 75% of the existing building. There's a general statement of what's allowed in each category. And then there's that that other sentence that says uses of similar kind and character can also be approved by the zoning commission upon request. So this amendment, and the way he outlined it in his memo, was to allow them some flexibility if they get a tenant and the tenant needs another 10,000 square feet of space in one of the categories, to move the categories around, but there'll always be a floor and there'll always be a ceiling, right? In each of the three categories. I was reading over my staff report today, and I was actually wrong in the middle paragraph where I said that there are no square footage limitations in the zoning regulations in the categories, just an underlying intent within the zone to provide a mix of uses. Well, that is true, but I was wrong because the community facilities do have a maximum, which is 10% of the gross acreage of the site. So I apologize for that mistake of mine. But in any case, the purpose of setting the floor and the ceiling is to allow for some flexibility as tenants move in and out and they want a little bit more space. And this occurs in multi-tenant buildings throughout the city. And they just don't want to get hung up if somebody comes in, wants another 10,000 square feet, do they have to go back to the zoning commission, amend the master plan, go back through a 2-month process because it's got to get referred, then it's got to go back. That doesn't really kind of work expeditiously. And so they've asked for some flexibility, again, highs and lows within the three categories. And then staff would monitor that when they come in for a fit out, a tenant fit out, a waiver if they need it, and then they can just proceed through the permitting process. There isn't this like stopgap for 3 months while you have to go back and ask, can I get more neighborhood retail and a little bit 10,000 less? I mean, there's still, the numbers all have to work, but it provides for that flexibility, and I think that's reasonable. I mean, we do that in others for other people. So I think that's good, and we'll always ensure that there's a mix. There's a mix of neighborhood retail. There's a mix. There's not a mix. There's some neighborhood retail and service. There's some community facilities, and there's some non-residential not serving the immediate needs. So again, ensuring a mix of uses, which is what we want, a mixed use development, but a little bit more flexibility so we don't get hung up on, this person wants to rent this much space. And obviously, as one number goes up, another number has to come down. So we'll keep track of that internally. And again, as outlined in Attorney Beecher's letter, assuming that there's a positive recommendation from you, or whatever your recommendation is, but that the zoning commission approves the increase to the maximum, the 950,390 square feet. I've provided a table of what kind of that building looks like and the breakdown. So the existing building is 1,267,186 square feet. Phase one, the residential square footage, and this was in the master plan, 533,946 square feet. And then if they went to the max on the non-residential square footage, it would be 950,390 square feet. And how do you get that? You get that by adding the sum of what's in the building, usable, 59608, plus what we talked about, the non-usable square footage, which is a little over 143,000 square feet. And then there's a phase two, which is a development on the adjacent piece, which would amount to 216,650 square feet. So the 733, 740, and the 216, 650 add to the 950. And the 950 is the max. They're at 75%. In terms of compliance with the plan of conservation and development, the 2020 master plan just last year was deemed in compliance with the characteristics of the P&D. I don't see any of these amendments really changing any of that. Again, the proposed uses in square footage have to remain within the limits designated within the zoning regs and approved by the plans, and we would monitor that. The amendments don't present really any condition that would render the site non-conforming with respect to the zoning regulations. It's still a mixed-use development. And at the time, again, that of a subsequent site plan approval, which is how the regulations are written, we internally would keep track, of what the space is and what the space is used for. The proposed amendments meet the criteria for approval as noted in 4H3C of the P&D regulations, and will maintain a site that we believe is compliant with the POCD and the purpose for which it was rezoned. Again, any future site plans or any waivers still have to, will ensure compliance with, they have to go to EIC, with the zoning regulations, make sure the utilities are adequate and the roadway network is adequate. So based on the above, we think that it's reasonable for the commissions to conclude that the amendments are consistent with the purpose for which the site was rezoned, and they do provide some flexibility for mixed-use development and don't materially alter the master plan that was approved last year. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Questions?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Joel.
since Ms. Cleaver has covered that to the nth degree, I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission finds that the amendments are consistent with the plan of conservation development, meet the purpose and intent of the P&D zone, and will not negatively impact the health and safety and welfare of the general public. As such, we return a positive referral to the zoning commission.
Thank you, Joel, for the positive referral. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Sylvain. Thank you, Perry. Yeah, this is very interesting. This building's had an interesting evolution, and those of us who have been around a while to sort of follow it through its life to where we are today it's just very interesting. I think Sharon used the word creative on the last referral. Creative is the operative word here. I remember in 1982 when Union Carbide built their headquarters in Danbury. I remember that. I think most of us were in Danbury in 1982. For the record, I was a junior at the University of Connecticut at that time. I think Mr. Chiocchio was a senior at the same school. But anyway, and to see it evolve out of Union Carbide and into the Matrix and now the Summit, and we're trying to come up with creative ways to match that building to what we need in 2021. So a real challenge for planners, Sharon, a real challenge for anyone in the world of city and urban planning. So well done. And it'll just be interesting to watch this whole thing evolve. It's sort of fascinating for those of us who've been around a while. So with that little speech, we have a motion for a positive referral and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I will try your minds and we'll take a roll call vote again. A yes is a positive referral. A no is not a positive referral. And we go to Mr. Urice. Ms. Hofstetter.
Yes.
Mr. Kiokio.
Yes.
Mr. Sylvain.
Yes.
And Chairman Finaldi votes yes. So this matter also gets a positive referral to the Zoning Commission. And I just wish anybody on this particular Zoom meeting that's involved in this, I wish you a lot of good luck. So well done and good luck in the future.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will move right to the third and last referral on our agenda this evening. It's a ZBA referral, ZBA application 2109, 3 Lake Avenue Extension, LLC, 3 Lake Avenue Extension, G15005, CA80 zone. This is a use variance. Section 5B2A, allow use of the property as a, quote, shelter for homeless with conditions, close quote. ZBA public hearing scheduled for May 13th, 2021. Again, commission members, the report, the staff report on this matter dated April 15th was previously distributed, as was a copy of the original application from the applicant. And with that, Sharon, we'll go right back to you. Hold it. She's muted. I think you're muted.
I am muted. I was
Okay.
listening to myself talk. Okay, so the Zoning Board of Appeals received the application for a use variance from 3 Lake Avenue Extension LLC for use of the site as a shelter for the homeless with conditions. It's tax assessor lot G15005 at 3 Lake Avenue Extension. And that LLC is the LLC of Pacific House West, who is the contract purchaser of the site. The owner of the site, Ram Krishna PR LLC, has authorized submission of the use variance application. So again, the application proposes to vary section 5B2A of the zoning regulations to allow that use on that site. The site is in the CA80 zone. It is currently occupied by, well, the structure on that site is an 86-room hotel that has been used since March of last year under the direction of both the Department of Housing, the State Department of Housing and State Department of Public Health as a shelter for the homeless. The zoning regulations require use variances to be referred to both the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission for review and report pursuant to section 11B4A. The hardships contained in the application, which I'm sure you've all read, and per the application and in furtherance of the governor's executive order 7P, and that is to provide or arrange for non-congregate housing for people who, by their nature of their existing housing, are at some increased risk of exposure or infection or transmission of COVID-19. The state, under that executive order, and informed homeless shelters, which the city does operate, of the availability of this alternate housing, this non-congregate housing. And in this regard, the State Department of Housing is proposing to utilize federal funds through HUD under the CARES Act to purchase and establish this non-congregate emergency homeless shelter at this location. And they also determined, the State Department of Health, that the project would not have a significant impact on the human environment and that no environmental impact statement under the NEPA Act was required. So the CA80 zone is as you know, an arterial commercial zone that does allow a variety of uses. The site is 1.52 acres in size. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot in that zone. They sent as well in the application a copy of their 1987 site plan that was approved. Hotels and motels are permitted uses in the CA80 zone. So obviously that was a permitted use. The vehicular access to the lot is from Lake Avenue Extension, which is an arterial road, and bordering the lot are lands of the state of Connecticut. DOT for 84, and to the north, the Housing Authority, and those two areas are in the RMF4 zone. There's a multi-tenant structure in the CA80 zone, which I think you all know may have had a Dunkin' Donuts in it at one point. And then there's a gasoline station in the CN5 zone. Actually, across the street, I didn't include it in the report. Across the street is actually, I think, the CL10 zone. So it's a little kind of, there's a bunch of different parcels, zone different things there. The applicant proposed a number of conditions that include provisions that would limit the number of supportive housing rooms in the building, restrict the rooms to be occupied for the homeless from having full kitchens, so there's no cooking and stoves and venting and things going on there. The conditions include identification of required information that has to be submitted for permits. And key to this, assurances that the rooms would meet the definition of affordable housing within the meaning of the statutes under 8-30G via these recorded deed restrictions. I guess you guys know, a use variance, they're few and far between. Why? Because they allow a use that isn't allowed in that zone. In this particular case, again, hotels are permitted uses in the zone. They offer rooms for people who are paying. In the case of the shelter, they're offering similar transient lodging for a population that just can't pay. The supportive housing rooms that are proposed, and again, we can walk through the conditions if you want, but you've seen them in the application. As we understand it, the state will be issuing vouchers to help 3 Lake Avenue or Pacific House West, 3 Lake Avenue Extension LLC to aid in the operation of the building. So the supportive rooms different from shelter rooms. It's a little bit more, it's like a transition from a shelter bed into, you can live a little bit on your own, but you still need a bunch of the support services. Again, the supportive housing rooms will not have ranges or cooking, those kinds of cooking facilities. In our zoning regulations, hotels and motels, neither hotels or motels nor shelters for the homeless are considered dwelling units. And again, the prohibition in the condition on these cooking, and we're focusing a lot on that, on cooking facilities, will ensure that the rooms don't become dwelling units. Why? Well, the CA80 doesn't allow residential uses, so they're not considered dwelling units, but neither are hotels. Again, so in this specific instance, under the declared public health and civil preparedness emergency and the state DPH orders about housing for people experiencing homelessness, and in accordance with the section of Fuller that I quoted, we think it's reasonable that you could conclude that the use variance wouldn't substantially change the uses permitted in the CA80 zone. And the proposed conditions G, J, K, and L regarding the supportive services, compliance with section 8-30G, and the proposed deed restrictions really do have public benefits for the city of Danbury. The support, again, just a little bit, the supportive services requirement in the condition assures that it's just not giving somebody a bed and a bag lunch and sending them on their way. There'd be supportive services there, counseling, work related, so that persons experiencing homelessness can kind of transition from that position into more self-sufficiency and being able to live and work on their own. Again, the deed restrictions are really really a good thing for the city of Danbury. It will help increase our unit count of affordable housing with respect to the provisions of 8-30G, whether they're either deed restricted or governmentally assisted. So that's a real benefit for the city. The plan of conservation development, the POCD recommends that this property be used for general commercial use. And I've quoted from it, wide range of retail and service uses, office, medical facilities, entertainment, community facilities, wholesale distribution, and assisted living. Hotels provide a service. Hotels aren't specifically listed as, being in that group, but they are obviously included in the zone. So the presumption is that they are similar. Again, the shelter provides transient housing for people who, just don't pay, who can't pay. And hotels provide the same thing for people who do pay. And it's interesting to note that where the shelters for the homeless in the city are permitted, which is only in the CBD zone and the RH3 zoning district, a shelter for the homeless isn't included in that definition, those definitions of what uses are allowed in that zone either. So there's no real difference. The housing section of the POCD says the city should undertake actions to expand the supply of affordable housing. Because these are, and the condition is that they be deed restricted, these will increase the city's supply of affordable housing. They'll get to count towards how we count units for purposes of the Housing Appeals Act and any related moratorium that may come for that. And then again, the housing section of the plan says that we should support actions that meet the needs of the special needs group, which includes the homeless. Again, there'll be social and case management services, counseling, and other kinds of supportive services there. This is, as we understand it, the new model for transitional and supportive facilities to address the needs of the homeless, and is a model that is endorsed by the state. Clearly, they're providing $5 million of federal funding for the purchase and operation of this facility. So we think that it meets those requirements of the Plan of Conservation and Development. And then in conclusion, purchase, it is use of this site the way it's proposed with the specific conditions that are attached, and a joint collaborative effort between all the different organizations does represent a different kind of response, a more global response to dealing with this specifically, but not only, and will be after the declared public health emergency, because I think we're not going to go back to kind of the way it used to be. I think from a public health perspective, that's not going to occur. There's benefits to allowing this use on this site that the city will get, including we won't be operating a shelter on New Street. There will be no shelter on New Street. Whatever the city's role is will be related to services at this site, and that's a big benefit. Again, it's a strategy that is a combined collaborative effort. Not everybody, shouldn't say that. Let me take that back. There are many people who are in favor of how this has been operating, and feel like this is the appropriate response to deal with this issue. And again, those conditions on the deed restrictions are a good thing for Danbury in a lot of different aspects. So with that, I would just ask if you to consider to ensure compliance with those affordable housing restrictions in those conditions J, K, and L. We would ask that you add to a report to the ZBA that if you so choose, that the applicant record those deed restrictions prepared and, as accepted by the Office of Corporation Counsel within 10 days of the granting of the variance, should the ZBA do that. And that will ensure that those deed restrictions get on the land records. Those units, which are existing units, will then will help us count towards meeting our affordable housing goals. And then I would just ask as well that, let me just say that we think this use on this particular site with these very specific conditions does uphold the integrity of the zoning regulations. This is a specific use on a specific site in a zone. So we do not have an objection to this request, and that we would also ask you, because we don't report directly to the ZBA, that you attach, however you decide, you attach a copy of the staff report to your recommendation to the ZBA so they have it. And with that, I will answer any questions. Sorry for being long-winded.
No problem, Sharon. Any questions for Mr. Sylvain? Go right ahead, Perry.
Sharon, a point of clarification on the deed restrictions. I noticed it said for both the supportive housing units and the shelter units, they would be family only. Does that mean, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but does that mean that we'd no longer, and when I say we, I guess I mean Pacific House versus our current city shelters, would we collectively as a city no longer take sex offenders because of that restriction? From, I guess, the empty bed program?
This is the way the qualification, it's either a family unit or it's an elderly unit, I think. I'd have to go back and look, but I can't say that for a fact. I don't know who they're taking. I know that the deed restrictions has to do with earning what the earnings are, right? What the person makes. So they can't be, it has to be, their income has to be equal to or less than 40% of the state median income for no less than 40 years. And what that does on either the rooms that are assigned to the supportive housing or the rooms that are assigned to provide shelter beds. Again, if you were transitioning through this facility, you needed a bed, you get a shelter bed. They work with you. You know, you move along, and instead of just saying, okay, here's a voucher, go live somewhere, they say, go live in one of our other units. You're still going to have the same supportive services right here, but maybe you can, you don't need to be in a shelter bed necessarily anymore. You can live a little bit on your own, but you still kind of need some supportive housing. The Department of Housing has confirmed with us that both the shelter beds and the supportive housing rooms will qualify either towards the city's count of its number of affordable units, or towards the moratorium count. And that's a really different discussion because it's confusing. Some things count under one thing. If you're counting up the total number of housing units, that's one picture. If you're trying to get a moratorium from 830G, there's only a specific number of units that count. So in either case, these rooms, supportive or shelter bed rooms, will count in one instance or another. And that is a good thing for the city of Danbury, because we need to be increasing our number so we won't be subjected to 8-30G. But I can't answer this specific question about the sex offenders and things like that.
Okay. That I do understand, but I was curious because it's going back to something Mayor Boughton had said, and I think he first said it in one of the city addresses, that he was looking to open kind of a collective shelter, transitional housing, career guidance, all the things that Pacific House sounds like they're going to be offering. Looking to open one larger facility, and he was looking at the space kind of behind the police station. And I remember he had said that one of the benefits of that was that only families would be allowed at this shelter, meaning that we would no longer have to take sex offenders from the empty beds program. When someone needs a bed and they call around to the various cities looking for housing for that person for the night, we would only be taking families in that case. And I was just curious if that was one aspect of this project or not.
Yeah, I think that's more of a question for the operational, how Pacific House is going to operate them. They will be deed restricted, so that we know. Assuming that, or should this should the ZBA grant the use variance? So it would be granted with these conditions. They've proposed it with these conditions, and but that's more of an kind of an operational thing.
And I would just add that the ZBA is having a full public hearing on this.
Right.
So we have the right to submit the question and make sure they answer it in the forum of a public hearing to clarify that.
And then they would be the right people there. The applicant would be there to answer those questions.
Understood.
Again, you're
Thank
just
you.
looking at, is it consistent with the plan? Do you uphold the kind of integrity of the zoning regulations? I mean, from you guys, it's more the plan, zoning commission, zoning regulations, and just looking at, how does it relate to other uses that are allowed in the zone?
Thank you, Sharon, for that. Any other questions for Sharon at this time?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Bob.
No, it's Joel.
Oh, Joel, I'm sorry.
Sorry, nose is getting heavy this time of night. I just, an observation, that was a really long answer not to answer the question, which you did acknowledge at the end there, Ms. Cletero. But while I appreciate the positive things this does for our affordable housing percentages, I know that at this hotel over the last couple of years, Stanford has been sending a bunch of their homeless up to the shelter to live, not Danbury residents per se. Of course, it was a Stanford organization, as I understood it, that's actually running the facility right now. My question is, given this is on our turf, and especially considering there's federal and state fingers in this thing, do Danbury homeless get a priority in having both day beds and transitional housing, and so long as there's a need within Danbury? That's the question.
And yeah, I that's more of an operational question that I don't have the answer for. I mean, the Pacific House would have to answer that question at the public hearing. You know, even if they were here tonight, we couldn't really let them answer the question. So again, I would try to, I know I'm not answering the question, but I would try to focus on, is this use, forget who's operating the use, is this use with these conditions appropriate for this site? And does it uphold the integrity of, does it comply with the POCD? Oh, he froze, I think.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Yokio, go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
We lost Joel too, by the way.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh.
Sorry about that. So there's 86 rooms in this hotel. It says
Right.
max 48 for the supportive housing. So that means maybe 38 for shelter. So the supportive housing means that there's vouchers to pay for those rooms, but the shelter rooms, they don't get paid for. How does that work? Or is that another operational question?
No, well, I mean, as I understand it, the state would be issuing you vouchers for the supportive housing, as I indicated. And then I think various state programs help support the shelter beds.
Okay. And could this go back to a hotel at any point, or is that, does that, if this is changed, would they have to come back and get a reuse?
Yeah, they'd have to give up the variance.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, so they get a use variance to use it. Now they don't want to use it as that. I also don't, I'm answering a question with a question, because the details of the purchase with the state, I'm not 100% on, because that's, you know, that's kind of or out of my bailiwick, but the use would have to change, and that has to go through a process. So we would, if you don't want to use it for that, we would ask them, give up your variance.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Sharon at this time, commission members? Now, Sharon, I know this was you mentioned it was a collaborative effort. It took a lot of work to get this thing around the corner, and I just wanted to make sure we recognized your efforts to that end. So thank you very much for that. Tough issue and a lot of moving parts here. But again, the full public hearing on this matter will be held before ZBA on May 13th. Anything else? If there's nothing else, commission members, I'll entertain a motion on this regard. Either
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Perry.
I do have a comment, I guess. While I wouldn't refute that this would contribute to our affordable housing and help us achieve several goals from the POCD, I would maybe add one point of contention that while I think it's very similar in use to a hotel in that it does attract transient guests, I guess the intent might be in question of why you would want a hotel in that zone and what the benefit would be versus a shelter. You know, the people, I guess my point is the people you're attracting with a hotel are here to do business, maybe participate in tourism, visit family, etc. And I would wonder whether people coming to use it for a shelter use might contribute to the costs of our services, whether that's police, ambulance, the various other services that are offered in the city for those in need, whether that would just add to the burden versus being kind of a contributing factor like a hotel. And I guess my point is that in that sense, I don't agree that they necessarily are similar uses, but I do agree otherwise that it does help us achieve several goals and is in line with many of the city's goals. And those are my simple comments.
No, well stated, Perry. It's a complicated problem. It's one of those for which there is no easy solution. Now, we're just a land use commission, and there's obviously issues that arise out of this use that go well beyond the purview of a local planning commission. So and we can only hope that you know, the other people that speak to this issue, I mean, this occupancy of this location, consider all the things you just said, because they're all very valid, and there's no question about it. But we have a referral to the ZBA, and that's all our only involvement is at this point. So we have to make a decision here. So commission members, unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion.
I have just a clarification question, which I will only take a minute. So we're closing a shelter on New Street, and that's different though from the soup kitchen, right? So that's
Yeah.
two who have been providing shelter beds as well. So
No, they have been, but they lost that appeal.
yeah, I know. So if we close both of those, what is the population that they were both in terms of shelter handling? Is that more than 86 or however many the beds are? As they get?
No, because our shelter on New Street, I think they both had less than 20
Okay.
beds.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem, Ellen. Anything else? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion, but I'd like to, if I need any conditions or anything, somebody's gonna have to help me with that before I do it.
Well, you'd have to first decide whether it's a positive or negative referral.
Okay,
And
well,
then
you want me to propose it then, and then we can word it. Okay, so I'll make a positive recommendation to the zoning board of appeals based on anything.
We can get back to that in a second. I want to get a second. Will somebody second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded for a positive referral. Go ahead, Helen.
Okay, so is there any conditions that I need to attach to it? I guess that's my question.
Well, this isn't go ahead, Sharon.
No, I would just say that, again, the zoning regulations require a report from you guys. So is this use at this site under a use variance? Does it uphold the integrity of the regulations, and is it consistent with the POCD for the reasons stated in the report?
Okay, but I'm not asking that question. I'm stating that's a condition, right?
Well, you would say that that's the reason for your positive. I'm just recommending that you might consider that's a reason for your positive recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really, I want to make sure I clarify, this isn't like a site plan approval where we have
No.
conditions where we want the sidewalk here and the cross. It's not
No.
You
real.
don't have to worry about that. I'm fine with that. I'd make a positive referral, that's it.
Okay.
And I would just ask that you send it, although the one thing I would say is that you ask the ZBA to put that condition in about recording the variance if they are recording the deed restrictions. And that's noted on my last page 3. And then attach a copy of the report. Yeah, because we had recommended to you to ask the ZBA to condition the use variance as on all the conditions that they've applied for, but also that the applicant record. We asked the ZBA to have the applicant record the deed restrictions within 10 days.
Okay, I don't know. Joanne, did you get that, or do I have to try to spit that out again? Okay, good.
Yeah, it's on the last, basically.
Yeah, I
last
mean, I understand it, but to repeat it, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, so can a member of the staff, Sharon, who's the chairman of ZBA? I don't even know who it is.
Well, the chairman is Dick Jowdy, but he's really because he hasn't been doing
Who
chairman
is
duties.
running it then? Who's running it?
Well, Rod Moore has been chairing the meetings. So,
Okay, so somebody from staff could just get an email to him and just say, at the planning commission meeting of April 21st, there was a discussion regarding blank. We hope you can weave that into your public hearing. So those questions get asked in a public forum. Those issues get addressed. The deed restrictions, whatever they were.
oh, yeah. I mean, Joanne will draft up a regular, what looks like an 8-3A referral, but it's really like a report. And
Okay,
that with your motion based on
Okay.
the report, and yeah, we'll draft it up like.
okay.
And I would
Arnie?
just say, hold on, Jen, one say, I would
Sorry.
also just say, I know we're in discussion, so I apologize, but Perry, like, ask the questions at the ZBA, let them answer how it's gonna be operated, because I can't do that. I'm not the operator, and we don't allow them to talk in these situations, but they'll be there and they can answer every question for you.
And this is one of
Thank you.
the limitations of a referral. This is
Right.
just a referral. We don't have a public hearing. We don't ask for
Right.
speaking in favor, speaking against. We don't get reports from our departments. It's very limited. So I want to remind
Right.
everybody. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
and
Jen.
I mean, it does open up due process issues if you start like, yeah, let them answer, then somebody
No,
else. Yeah, you know that, yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
No, I just wanted to say, Joel just texted me, his tablet crashed and he's trying to get back into the meeting. So Joanne, if you could let him in.
I see him. He just popped up. Hang on. Okay, I'm letting him in. I did click on it. I don't know where he is.
Yes,
Let's see.
he's
There he
He's
is.
coming in.
There he is. Okay.
You're muted, Joel.
Muted.
You're muted.
We have to
Can't
give
hear
us-
you.
We can't hear you. We can't.
Yeah, I just missed the mic when I clicked to turn it back on.
Okay, well, here's where we are. There's been a motion for a positive referral and a second. There's been a discussion. Unless you want to add anything, you're eligible to vote.
I just want a quick yes or no answer to my question I asked about does Danbury get priority?
Oh, he
Again-
must not have heard your explanation before he got knocked off, Sharon.
Yeah, that's an operational question, Joel, and it's, and again, the last thing I said before you rejoined us was I reminded everybody as to the limited format of a referral. We don't have people speaking in favor or against. We don't get reports from our city departments. So that's going to have to be addressed at the ZBA level. And you're welcome to email staff to make sure that gets on the ZBA agenda, question gets on the record. But we can't, as a referral, we just don't know. We can't ask them for an operation plan. We can't.
Give me 15 seconds to make up my mind whether I vote no on this then.
Well, okay, I'll give you 5, because we're gonna take a roll call vote, and a motion's been made and seconded, so a yes is in favor of a positive referral, and a no is not in favor of a positive referral, and I'll tell you what, Joel, we'll have you vote last. Again, Ms. Hofstadter,
Yes.
Mr. Kiokio,
Yes,
Mr. Sylvain,
Yes,
Chairman Finaldi votes yes, Mr. Urice.
It would be just a waste of time to vote anything else. Yes.
Okay, so this matter will get a positive referral from planning, but again, I would encourage everybody, and I'm a broken record and you're sick of hearing me say this, but acknowledge the limitations of a referral to the planning commission. We don't have a public hearing. And if you've got legitimate questions, the forum for those questions is the full public hearing by ZBA. You have the right to email the chairman and say, in your position as a planning commission member, you have these concerns, and they should be addressed at that public hearing. You have the right to do that.
Okay.
I know that frustrates us many times. We've had a colorful history with referrals here on the Danbury Planning Commission. So
You mean we still have all the rights of a citizen of the city of Danbury, huh?
Spoken like a true politician, Joel. Well done.
I just want to
okay.
say one thing, if I can, Arnie, just one thing, just for point of clarification, and that is that, as you know, the referrals, if you get it, you know, if you didn't, you might need a super majority. But in this case, it's just a review and report, so it doesn't change the way the vote. I mean, the ZBA needs 4 anyway, period.
It's not actually a referral then. It's
not really referral, but we do it in the manner of a referral because that's what we used to doing, and that doesn't really matter. They call it a report. Your referral can be is your report. I'm just saying it doesn't change, like they need all 5 votes. You need
it could be 0-5 against and still doesn't matter.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
as
Barry.
I'm still learning, I would love if I could ask a quick procedural question, because
Of
I
course.
wouldn't want to hold this up with inappropriate questions in the future. I guess I was trying to ask questions that did stem from Sharon's reports, and I tried to approach them from a planning perspective, especially the second point, which was more just a comment, because I felt like I didn't agree with the assertions made in Sharon's report. Is this an appropriate forum for that, or is it not?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm all set then, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Just be careful about whether you park under the lights in the parking lot if you question one of Ms. Cleaver's reports.
You know where I live now.
I actually don't, but that's right.
Okay, Commissioner, under this, there's a couple of items you can take a look at. Under correspondence, we have none. Under other matters, I don't think there's a letter from Ben Dodo. So I think that's,
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
that needs a commission vote. That's a request for an extension.
Yep.
okay. Is there, do we get a report on this or anything?
Not a report. It's just, there's a link for the letter that Ben submitted requesting the 5-year extension. This is for a special exception that the commission approved back in 2016.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Motion for and to approve the extension.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the 5-year extension. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed? My apologies, commission members. I didn't have that written down for some reason. So the 5-year extension is approved. And then there's one matter under for reference only for your review. Other than that, commission members, unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed? The meeting of April 21st, 2021 is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Good night, folks.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Aye.
you.